And so we are being invited to see through the great concealment, to see that right here, before us, inside us, all around us, beating as every heart, dancing as every cell in the body, is divine wholeness. And it is only the great concealment that gives the impression that this is not so. And yet deep within, every being knows this truth. Every being knows this truth because there is only one divine wholeness, and absolutely everything belongs to this, without question. Nothing is left out. How could it be? How could wholeness be whole if anything was outside of wholeness? How is it possible? It's not. Absolutely impossible to be divided from divine wholeness. So we are either in concealment or we are in the flow of grace. But the great invitation of the moment is to see through the concealment, see through the illusion of separation, see through the illusion of any kind of subtle division, and to know the absolute unquestionable oneness of all that is, the all-encompassing perfect love that just is. That we are longing for love, we are longing for happiness, we are longing for connection. And yet this happiness, love, and connection is right here in the flow of grace, underneath the great illusion of concealment. So how incredible it is that we can open right here now to the great glory and grace of what is true. The invitation of this moment now is to be here now. We can come up with all kinds of complex imaginings about what it might take. But the moment here now is the invitation in its fullness. And the invitation is to be here in the fullness of this moment, just as it is. That nothing more is needed, but to turn to the now with all that you are. Let's say all that you are that feels to be divided. It's to bring everything to this moment, everything to the presence of now. And in the presence of now, the remembering of divine wholeness is here. But we cannot look with the mind and imagine that we are going to find something that makes sense to the mind. This is not possible because the mind consciousness is limited. And what we are speaking about underneath the concealment of limitation is the grace of the unlimited. So only when we come to the unlimited, the perfect wholeness that is already here, do we discover wholeness in wholeness. We discover wholeness itself is right here. But the limited mind cannot discover wholeness because the mind, even though it is created and flowing as part of that one wholeness, in a way, the mind consciousness has to collapse into consciousness itself. And only consciousness itself can awaken and remember its alive true nature. So that consciousness itself can remember its light. can remember that its light is divine wholeness. We could say that the source light that gives illumination to light and dark, that gives illumination to all play of opposites, by virtue of which light is illumination even possible? By virtue of what power can creation appear? By virtue of what force can any of this that we imagine we are experiencing be here, can happen? And so the invitation here now is to discover the source, and discover the source of the source, and to keep opening and opening as consciousness into more refined consciousness, more aliveness, in order to be carried consciously out of the dream of separation, out of any sense of division, and into the remembering of divine wholeness, into the remembering of perfect love, into the remembering of the love that is without condition, life that is without condition, into the remembering of all that is, the one, the only, the all. And so the moment is only ever an invitation to presence, only ever an invitation to know the truth of who you are, not through some kind of conceptual understanding or belief, but to know the truth of who you are openly, fresh, alive, here now. That we don't need how-tos, we don't need all kinds of concepts and beliefs, that this truth is so incredibly simple. It's just that the mind consciousness is so adept at overlaying and imposing complexity upon that which is utterly, utterly simple. It is this moment here now, without any overlay or imposition of mind, concept, belief, or ideas. And so this moment, just presence, just the presence of now, just like this, just simply like this. Just to be here, to not be looking for anything, because only the mind would be looking for something. It is not about stopping the mind. It is about being the aware being that can see the mind. So to illuminate and see the mind that might be looking for something, to see the mind consciousness that might have ideas about what this is, but to illuminate all that is moving and changing. We could say you already are divine wholeness. You already are perfect love. You already are the one, the all. So it's not about attaining or acquiring or getting somewhere or getting something. It is about illuminating everything that obscures the clear seeing, the clear vision of this truth. It is about illuminating everything that you are not, but not through a mental process. Just by seeing, if that is moving and changing, if you can see it as an object, then that you are not. We could say you are the pure subject, pure subjectivity. You are never an object. So at any moment there seems to be object. It is to be the witnessing presence of the object, to see the object and know that as the seer of the object, you are negating that you are that. You are not the story, you are not the thoughts, you are not the ideas and concepts, and you are not the person that you have believed yourself to be. So it is the opening to this moment, opening to being the openness, not someone opening. And it's totally okay as these words come for the mind to say, well, I don't know how. But as soon as that is seen, see the one that wants to know how and know that you are not that one. That's an object. If it's being seen, it's an object. Every thought is an object. And the objects of experience you are not. You are not the play of experience. You're not the story. You're not the history. You're not the imaginings, the past or the future. You're not even the present moment. Your presence itself. Presence itself brings the remembering of this truth that is always whole, always pure, always light. A wide open field of utter openness. So resting here in the presence, just simply being, in the felt sense of being, you are, you already are. And yes, there is an unfolding of consciousness within itself, a ripening, a refining, a maturing within consciousness itself. But nobody can do anything. Consciousness itself is a flow of intelligence opening to itself. And there is a naturalness to this flow. And the naturalness of the intelligence knows how it is absolutely wise. It knows how, and it knows how to carry itself. And so too does it know how, by divine orchestration, how to create the exact appearance of exactly what is needed to be seen in reflection in order to illuminate the obscurations, illuminate the karmic obscurations, illuminate what you are not in order to remember what you are. But there is a naturalness in this, and it is just about resting in the presence of now, being the aware being that illuminates, naturally aware, all that is moving and changing. We can speak of the witness that is witnessing the moving, changing, and the witnessing consciousness, the witnessing presence. It is aware of the moving, changing, and the witness is consciousness that is aware of the moving, changing, aware of the denser frequency of the moving, changing. And as the witnessing consciousness is aware of the moving, changing, the witnessing consciousness starts to feel its own presence and recognizes that its own presence is untouched by the moving, changing. And so there is this illumination that starts to happen within the witnessing presence consciousness, where the consciousness starts to realize that it is untouched by the moving, changing. And as it is untouched by the moving, changing, it starts to naturally be more aware of itself, almost as if to inquire into its own nature, because it is starting to recognize itself as not being the moving, changing, and being the awake, aware presence. And as the awake, aware presence, it starts to realize that it is untouched and somehow unaffected. And it starts to consciously be more awake to its own conscious nature. So consciousness itself, through being present, aware, and witnessing, naturally recognizes its independence from the moving, changing, and starts to consciously reflect, be aware within itself. Awareness, being aware of itself and opening to itself. And as awareness is aware of itself, and as the witnessing consciousness starts to really, in a way, witness itself, instead of witnessing the moving, changing, and avidly watching the moving, changing, the witness starts to witness itself. And as the witnessing consciousness starts to witness itself, it's as if the outer layer of witnessing dissolves into pure witnessing, dissolves into pure consciousness. Because in a way, the outer layer of witnessing is like has a subtle attachment to the mind consciousness, because it still can feel very much like a me and a witnessing that's watching the me. Can sometimes even feel as if that witnessing that's watching me and my thoughts and my life is somehow even part of the mind consciousness. And so in the witnessing, when the witness itself starts to realize its independence, this is the consciousness itself consciously waking up to itself, consciously recognizing that it is utterly unaffected by the moving, changing, independent. And then the sense of witnessing opens to be like a pure awareness, a pure awake awareness, consciously awake and aware of itself, just being. And here the sense of being has a purity, a sense of steadiness, a sense of openness, a sense of harmony, equanimity, just simply being, just simply being. And so, as long as the sense of being is recognized, it is just to be the being. Because the whole unfolding is in consciousness. And so the recognition of consciousness of itself, and we could say in that, for you to recognize that what you are is consciousness, that you are not the person, the story, the mind, that you are consciousness, you consciousness. Remember consciously the true essence nature and start to flow within yourself consciously so that the deeper refinement can happen. Really, what we are speaking of is accessing the finer frequencies, the finer flows of intelligence, the finer feelings within your own functioning. We could say the finer feelings of your own heart, the finer feelings of all of your functioning, more subtly aware and awake, not just operating on the dense layers of mind consciousness that is all about the me and mine and my problems, and just really moving so much in reaction and not really fully in the flow of life, really living with such limitation. And that's why there's a sense of limitation, a sense of suffering, a sense of wanting more, a sense of restriction or containment, is because in truth, living in the human condition, in the mind consciousness, is limited. It's profoundly limited. It's not even a tiny, tiny drop of your true reality, your true wholeness. And so, of course, there's going to be a longing for something more. But when the me starts trying to find that something more within the context of the world, which is limited, it's going to constantly be disappointed because it's just finding more limitation, more dead ends, more conditions, more concepts, more of the setup, the divine setup, which is really only in place to reflect to the beings, the souls that are ready, to reflect that there is a way out of limitation, but the way out is not in the play of the world. The way out of limitation is to stop, to come to the presence of being and open to being the consciousness of the moment, the presence, the alive, awake presence of the moment, and to stop playing in the illusory, conditioned game of mind consciousness and start to receive the clues, the constant invitation to remember. So the mind can say, oh, but it's hard. Yeah, it is hard. It's hard to have the vigilance to remain. It's hard to stay true when the habit has been to be so consumed in the play of the world. But it's also hard to be suffering and in misery. It's hard to be constantly disappointed. It's hard to be banging your head against a wall or running in a hamster wheel in the human condition. So the free will card says, choose your hard. You can choose your hard. You can choose the hard that is the misery and the running around, trying to find yourself in the play of the world and the moving, changing, and being constantly disappointed. Or you can choose the hard, which is about vigilance. You can choose the hard that carries you to God, or you can choose the hard that carries you away from God. Because really the choice is only in your own mind. It's only in your own consciousness. We could say the choice is, would you like to choose the limitation of mind consciousness and keep dancing around in the projected appearance of limitation? Or would you like to open to the vastness and the freedom of pure consciousness and go through the intelligent process of remembering divine wholeness, remembering God? It's up to you. Choose your hard, right? What we come to discover is that what the mind thinks is hard is going to be everything, because the mind is really all about complaining, comparing, because limitation compares and complains and is disappointed. Because limitation is always looking for the unlimited in limitation. And so limitation continually disappoints because what is being sought is the unlimited. And what is being offered is the unlimited in every moment. Now, if we are in complete delusion and ignorance and we don't know how, and we've never been given the invitation to presence, then there is such grace in this invitation coming. But when we have been given the invitation, when we have been given, we could say the only instruction that is needed, to be here now, to be still and watch, then we are choosing in every moment to turn away from God, to turn away from what we are longing for. Or we can choose to feel the longing and say yes to the presence of the moment and fall in, be carried into the unknown and out of the familiar, out of what is known. The mind is not really afraid of the unknown because it doesn't know what the unknown is. It can't be afraid of something that it doesn't know. What it is afraid of is that it has not got some kind of concept of known, familiar, past experience to rely upon. The mind consciousness wants limitation to help it feel secure. So it wants the known, it wants limitation, it wants past to rely on. It's like leaning the elbow, right? Just kind of leaning on the crutch of past. Well, I'll just lean here and at least I know what it is to be miserable and disappointed. At least I know what it is to feel constantly like I'm lacking and not enough. What a curious thing, right? What a curious thing. That I'd rather just stay miserable because it's familiar than let go and feel the unbounded spaciousness of not knowing. But this is the invitation of the moment, is to feel the unbounded spaciousness of the moment, to come to the presence, to not know anything, to know that you cannot come to this openness and try to catch it and say, well, how am I going to live this? What does this mean? What is my life going to be like? You can't know. You cannot know, because this pure life, unconditioned, is spontaneous and awake and living itself. It doesn't know. It doesn't know. So it can't give you the heads up of what's coming because it doesn't know. It's absolutely spontaneous. Every moment is a living, awake surprise. Nothing is known. No one knows anything. And in truth, this is what all of life is. But it is the mind that is constantly accessing past that imagines that it knows something. Because what it knows is the past story, right? Well, I've got a story of the past. If I can keep accessing that story of the past and overlaying this fresh, glorious moment of grace, if I can conceal that grace with a story of the past and bring some good old fear and anxiety in, then I'm going to feel okay in this moment. But if we strip away the past, memory, if we strip away concepts and beliefs, and we just meet this moment fresh, alert, alive, and awake, and glorious, the grace of divine wholeness, the mind might feel a little unsettled. But we come to the point where we say, who cares? Who cares what the mind has got to say about this? Who cares? Because there is a great parent here to the child of the mind that knows that something better is here beyond what the child of the mind thinks it wants, right? Beyond the child of the mind that says, I just want candy. I just want candy. I just want candy. I want the hit now. And tantrums on the floor because it wants what it wants. The great parent of the all, the all-encompassing perfect love says, you think you want candy. You think you want candy. But what you really want is the sweetness, the unconditional sweetness of your true nature, of perfect love. What you really want is the unconditional sweetness and purity of remembering the wholeness that you have always been before you got addicted to candy, right? Before you got addicted to imperfect, delusional love. You were perfect love. You are perfect love. Before you got addicted to relationships that constantly reflect your sense of lack, so that you feel like you have to keep banging your head against the wall and trying to make it work, trying to make it work, trying to be seen, trying to be loved, trying to be validated, right? Before you learned about the delusional ways of the world, you were perfection, and you are that perfection now, the perfect love, the unconditional love. Before learning all of the corrupt, distorted ways of the world, the collective consciousness, you were God, you are God, you are the all-encompassing wholeness that is and is right here, right now. Yes, the collective consciousness is deeply, deeply bought into delusion. There is no part of worldly functioning that is clear, no part. Everything, the whole functioning is absolute corruption. It's delusional. But this is where we choose our hard. Do we keep moving to collaborate and fuel the dysfunction? Or do we open to the light, to being the light, to being the unconditional life and being a way shower? Choose your hard, right? What we come to discover is what the mind thinks is hard isn't really hard at all. It's freedom. It's a flow of freedom where we truly start to invite every stone to be upturned, every dark corner of the shadowlands to be illuminated, every unconscious conditioned pattern to be brought to the surface, so that the depth of freedom can be so alive and grace-filled in the knowing of itself, so that we can see through the concealment and realize that even concealment is the great glory of the Mother of God, shining in all her glory. But we have to see it truly. We cannot use concepts and stay in the delusion and just say, oh, well, if it's all God, I might as well just stay here, safe, safe in the delusion, in the concept it's all God. Sure, you can. You can choose that hard if that's what feels appealing. But the grace of the moment is a constant invitation to see through the concealment and discover indirect experience, the truth of who you are. To discover indirect experience that you are the flow of grace, the flow of life, that it would be completely impossible to be apart from divine wholeness, that you never have been apart, and nor could you ever be apart. And as soon as there's some sense of remembering of this oneness, then the hard that you choose is the one that reveals everything that obscures and conceals. You choose the divine attraction. You choose to say yes to the knowing of the heart that brings the depth of surrender and devotion to keep saying yes to the glory, yes to the glory, yes to the victory that is already here, and yes to the possibility of seeing through concealment and flowing in grace, whatever is happening on the surface of life. Really to have the clear vision, to not be deluded and not continue to be corrupted, but to live in the perfect truth, no matter what the play of the surface of life looks like, that we can live this truth. We don't have to collaborate and fall in line. We can live this truth with an illumined heart that knows the one, that knows the freedom, that knows the glory. And we can be in utter profound service right here on the surface of life by shining this truth, shining this glory. And the invitation is here now. It is this moment, the invitation that says, be here, be the timeless of this moment, be the freedom of this moment, be this moment in utter openness, be this moment free of the mind's story, free of attachment to past and future. Be this moment just as it is, just as you are. Be this moment in true freedom. Be this moment free of thought, free of story, free of personhood. Be this moment as yourself. True self, openness, equanimity. And as we open to the truth of the moment, we come to feel the flows. And the flows are really flows of intelligence, which are really flows of bliss. And the flow of bliss is the nectar, the deep, subtle nectar that we can drink in from the aliveness of our own knowing. Drink in the flow of nectarine bliss. And the drinking in the flow of nectarine bliss allows us to extract the bliss from everything. Where there is clear vision, clear seeing, where we can see through the concealment and receive the grace, we can drink in the bliss of the moment. And drinking in the bliss of the moment is what continues to deepen the opening into divine wholeness, opening into a purer and purer revelation in consciousness. So it's as if we open first to the cosmic universal nature of consciousness, our pure open consciousness. We open to the freedom of our cosmic nature, our cosmic universal nature, and the felt sense, I am everywhere. I am openness. I am freedom. I am not the person. I am not limited in the mind body. I am openness itself, ever free. And then as consciousness, we keep refining to gather all the pieces of our remembering by coming to recognize the essence nature, the pure essence nature of consciousness knowing itself in and as everything. We start to recognize it in pure experiencing as the intelligence of life is moving within itself, the consciousness is moving within itself. There starts to be the recognition of the essence nature, being one with this, one with that, one with all. But the most important part of this is coming to be one with all of the parts of ourself that we have denied and that we keep a distance from, in a way, the unconscious. Because this opening becomes then a really global, universal, unifying within consciousness, where consciousness is coming to know itself really as the pure subject of all, the seer, the knower of all, the essence of all. And this has to extend to all of our functioning. It has to extend to opening the heart's protections and all of the unconscious, protected, conditioned places. The grace is that all of life is offering this possibility. It's offering this possibility perfectly, wisely, intelligently in every moment. It's offering the possibility when you see the reflection of your life is the possibility, the fertile possibility to meet yourself, your true self, more deeply by meeting every subtle energy frequency, every resonance of your nervous system that feels to be discordant. And to know that whatever feels to be discordant, it's just the finer feelings and the flows opening. You're really just getting to be more sensitive, to open to the finer flows of intelligence so you can know yourself more fully. Because really the opening of the sense of a protected, guarded heart is really the releasing of conditioned, protective patterns of functioning. And it's these protective patterns of functioning that cause reaction and cause anxiety and stress, cause disturbance in the life. So we could say that all disturbance is the concealed flow of grace. And it's offering us the possibility to see through the concealment and receive the grace. And to receive the grace is to receive the remembering that you are the grace, that you are the glory, you are the shining flow of unconditional life and love. But we can only receive this grace when there is a letting go of the guarding and protecting that feels like closed, protective, or frozen heart that just keeps holding the pattern of limitation. Now, simultaneously, the opening to the being, it's almost as if there's a vertical axis and a horizontal axis, although really the refinement and the opening of consciousness is way more global, universal, gyroscopic, we could say. It's not really just this way and that way. It's so much more subtle and refined and wise. It's a flow of complete, perfect intelligence, because intelligence is, of course, the divine wholeness. All of the flows of intelligence, all of the flows of consciousness, all of the flows of even mind consciousness, body consciousness, all is illumined by the great light of divinity that is the mother. So everything is all the one. And in a way, we are being invited to scramble our way back through surrender and devotion to the source and the source of the source, to keep scrambling through the play of life, through the divine play, the divine Leela, scrambling through surrender and devotion, letting go and letting go, seeing through the concealment and receiving the grace, letting go of the tight grip of control, holding position, and ideas and concepts that we believe are true, to discover the true truth, and that the true truth is never conceptual, is never known by the mind, can never be understood, can never even really be spoken. It's unspeakable, immeasurable, unexplainable. And so even these words are just pointing to the glory, right? Born of the glory, shining as the glory, and in this moment collapsing back into the glory. That is why there is no instruction here or nothing you can grab onto. You can't write it down and come back. You have to live it in the moment, ever fresh. It's the glory, the grace, of the moment, flowing just as it is. You, the all, the one, just as you are. You can be the shifting change in the collective consciousness just by living this truth, just by living this truth and letting go and letting go and letting go of all of the protections and ways that collaboration with the corrupt distortion of the worldly plays out. Letting go by remembering the great impossibility of separation and living this truth, and to stop pretending, stop denying that you are one with God, stop pretending that you are anything other than divine wholeness. It's like God saying, God, stop, stop fooling yourself. Stop fooling yourself right now. But in truth, of course, the divine knows, divinity, the mother knows this truth and is never involved, never away, never disturbed or disrupted. And yet there is this incredible divine play that is playing. We're not here to understand it. We're here to free ourselves from any sense of separation in order really for the collapse of the collective consciousness, the whole collapse of consciousness eventually. And this is really why it is so important to see through the delusion of our human condition, because eventually everything that we think of as important, humanity, the world, the universe, it will all collapse because it will no longer be needed. It will no longer be needed. The invitation is to remember the timeless, eternal nature. Remember what is true. And so that this that is true can just shine, let's say, on the surface of life. But that surface of life isn't world as we know it. It's not about making this world a better world. It's about knowing who you are so that the whole world consciousness can collapse into the remembering of divinity. So, of course, that kind of sharing can bring a fear to the mind. But can you feel in the heart the truth, the profundity, that you're so much more than little old me? You're so much more than the one that wants and desires and is so stuck in a looping story of wanting to get what the me wants. And this is why the great parent has to bring in what seems like misfortune and disaster on the worldly level. Because on a worldly level, the invitation is to wake up, sleepy dreamers, see through the concealment and receive the grace. Stop collaborating with the delusion. It's an invitation to see through the delusion, to free yourself, free yourself. And as you free yourself, you start to bring the reverberations of this truth, this unconditional life and shining glory right to the surface. And really then these reverberations start to affect the ones that you love in your dream story, start to affect and bring this possibility to the beings that are in your dream. But you do not have to be concerned for anyone else, because you cannot change anyone else, because it's like trying to change a movie character. Change the perspective of consciousness And when the perspective of consciousness shifts, it shifts everything. It invites coming to the knowing that you are perfect love. You are the all. You are the one. You're not restricted or limited by the species, right? It's to come to an integrity. To come to an integrity is to come to the living truth. That we have so many ideas through the mental of what integrity is. But true integrity is wholeness, is the whole truth, is to know that you are the purity and the light of divinity. You are the untainted. And to be a living integrity is to be this living truth, to not be concerned for the me. To come to the integrity of the whole truth is to come to a remembering, a deep enough remembering, where the knowing that you are never, ever apart. It would be impossible to be apart from love, from God, from divine wholeness, from the source, that you are only concerned with following everything back that feels to be an object or separate or somehow restricted, that you can follow it all back, follow everything back to discover the source of all is the perfect love. And you find that where you are one with all of your companions and families and loves, with your pets and even your belongings, is right in the heart of love. You find that you are one in the explosive joy of the heart, the unrestricted, unconditioned heart. You are absolute one in love. And that it's not about the story, that every being has to live out their story. We could say every soul has to go through what they have to go through, because every soul is part of the whole in an orchestration. You cannot save anyone, however much you love them. You can only love them in true love, not in partial love, in true divine perfect love. Know that you are one with all the ones that you love. And then allow the freedom of each soul to live out whatever the play, the divine orchestration ordains for that soul, right? That we cannot save anyone. Can you save yourself? Can you find the living salvation in your heart in this moment? Can you find the salvation of divine wholeness in the heart? Because this is how we save all, let's say, is to find the living salvation, to find the living wholeness of our own true nature, and to keep opening and opening and opening. That the grace of opening is a gift to all. It is such a humbling to have to let go of all that we imagine that we are, all of our roles and positions, all of the things that we imagine that we have to do that are so important, and to know that the ultimate grace is to know our own true nature, to live this true nature, to shine this true nature, so that we can bring this perfect love right to the surface, and we can share this wisdom light. We can share this love, this wisdom, this light through embodied living, being embodied life. We can share it with all of the beings in the field, in our dream, Because what you come to find is that you are not really sharing it with anyone, because there is only yourself. You are just love loving itself. You are just light shining, self-sustaining light, surrendering into itself in order to sustain its own wholeness. That there is no one else. There is only you, only the one. And it is about remembering the reality, the real truth, the perfect love, the undivided wholeness, the all-encompassing one that is divine wholeness. Words don't matter, because we come to a point where words just seem so small. Trying to understand is so contained. And all that is really longed for is to soar, soar the unfathomable, immeasurable subtlety of your infinite, unbounded, true nature. Remember the great impossibility. The invitation of now is to release the great misunderstanding. The great misunderstanding is that it is even possible to be divided from God, from the Mother. It is completely and utterly impossible to be divided in any way. And so the invitation to see through the concealment. It's not that concealment couldn't still play, but that you're not fooled by concealment, that you're able to extract the nectarine, blissful grace, even when concealment is playing, that you can stay connected in the knowing of the heart, the knowing of truth, that whatever is playing, this too, even if to start with, it's a sense of this has to be God, this has to be love, this has to be Ma's unconditional love. Keep remembering in the heart until the remembering is a blazing light, a wisdom light, the remembering of divine wholeness. You are the timelessness of this moment. You are the pure, untainted, flowing light of this moment. You are the presence. You are the happiness, the unbridled joy of this moment, the utter delight of this moment, delighting in itself. You are the deep, undisturbable peace of this moment. You are the treasure that you are seeking. There is no seeker and sought that are divided. There is no lover and beloved that is divided. There is only the love of God. The love of God is without direction. Perfect love, unconditional, pure, divine love is the power is the glory. It is the victory of light, remembering itself not as an opposite to dark, but as the principle of illumination, the divine principle of illumination. And this light is the guiding light that is shining in and as everything. And if we are able to be still and rest in the presence of being, we can start to see the light of consciousness shining within, see the glimmering and shimmering light of the wide open field of infinite boundless freedom shining, not out there, but in our own consciousness. And as consciousness knows itself and comes to recognize its light, then we start to see the same shining light in the reflection too. But we can only see the shining light in the reflection when we know the light. It's like we need the clear vision. We need the clear seeing of consciousness to see consciousness, right? It's like we have to come into the knowing of the light, the truth of who we are, in order to have a more subtle, clear vision. Consciousness, dancing in consciousness to know itself, experience itself, and awaken more consciously to the subtle, finer frequencies of itself. Opening all sense of protection, patterning, and conditioning, to reveal eventually that even all concealment has only ever been the same glory. But this can only be seen as we shift the perspective of seeing to clear vision. We cannot see it with a human eye. A human eye is an identified eye, right? We can only see it in the clear vision, the clear light of seeing yourself. So the invitation is only ever to be here now in perfect presence, in perfect love, in perfect openness. Nothing can keep you from yourself. tiny misunderstanding can seem that way, but nothing can keep you apart from the divine wholeness, the perfect love, the oneness with the Mother that is the true light and grace of all.